first half season with NK Maribor is complete and it could be filed under successful, I think, but we're not here to worry about that. There are no competitive games while the transfer window is open in Slovenia, so this episode is focused solely on transfers. So as January started, Barisic came to us and said that he was unhappy with the amount of game time he had. We had a conversation and it basically ended in us promising to sell him. So that was a mission we had to get done in January. But of course, we didn't know what our funds were. So the board told us we had £624,000 to spend and we had a good chunk of wage budget available as well. Scouting, on the other hand, that would be a bit tougher. Heading into the window, we had pre-arranged deals as well, as Josip Ilicic joined FC Juarez for £20,000, and we also then looked to add one in as well. Burdic joined. He's a youngster that we don't know too much about, but is very highly rated by our scouts, so we signed him up for free and he joins the squad. And heading into the transfer window, we knew where we sort of needed to strengthen. At the back, we only had 3 or 4 senior centre-backs and a youngster to fight for all the positions we needed, so we knew centre-back was a key position to go out and strengthen. And with that, we had to review what we already had. 4 main centre-backs in the team. Vidmar, Kranjic, Rekic and Mbondo have all played a substantial amount of minutes for us this season and all excelling in different parts. Lan Vidmar, our 23-year-old Slovenian, was excelling in his pass completion, 93% throughout the season, 5.92 progressive passes per game, and he wasn't slacking in his headers as well, 73% win ratio. Tackles, he was only winning 70%, but making up for that with his passes. Kranjic was another 94% pass completion ratio, 6.31 progressive passes per game, but again lacking a little bit in tackles at 75% won. Not that that's bad, but could be better. Only winning 61% of his headers, not a terrible ratio, but not the best. Omar Rekic was our orchestrator. He kept the ball so well. 94% pass completion, barely lost possession every 90 minutes, registering only 4.01 possession loss per 90. Tackles at 72% isn't great, but he is more advanced as the libero. And when he's winning 75% of his headers, which isn't amazing, but also isn't terrible, but he isn't losing the ball, which is exactly what we want our libero to do. And last but by no means least, Bradley Mbondo has had a superb season. 76% of his tackles won is very good, but he's also attempting the most pressures at 5.34. He is pressuring a hell of a lot during the 90 minutes he plays. 93% pass completion, 5.63 progressive passes as well. Winning 72% of his headers is pretty decent at the back. And yeah, all 4 are playing very, very well. And because all 4 were playing well, we were hunting for someone to complement the back 4 that we already had available to play in those 3 positions, looking for potential young players that could step up and help, or players that could come in, take their first starting spot and relegate one of those players down to the bench. For me, the 2 best centre-backs we had were Omar Rekic and Bradley Mbondo, and those 2 stood out with some of the stats that we wanted to replicate as we went and searched for players. So into the player search we went and looked for our defensive attributes and made sure that Mbondo and Rekic were in that search as they got through to compare and contrast with the other people that we found. And once we had that list of players, we put them into my wonderful Python tool, if I do say so myself, and had a look at who had been performing brilliantly. Now, what we wanted to do was purely look at everybody in here, but focus on the best players. That meant focusing on those that had very good tackle ratio and header win ratio, and those that were also making good defensive contributions with a number of good pressures. And that led us to find these players. Daniel Loncar was the first one up, 27 years old. He would be signed as a first team starter and looked like he could do a good job. 84% of his headers were won. He was winning 14.28 possessions back per 90 minutes. He wasn't really losing possession and he was completing his passes. He wasn't progressing those up the pitch. He was very safe with the ball, but generally was an all-round very good defender. Pedro Gomes, a young Portuguese player from Famalicão, was playing in the top division of Portugal and didn't have the greatest stats to review, but had played 1,567 minutes. At 6'1" and only 21 years old, definitely could be one for the future. We were looking at his numbers. 80% of his headers won, 90% of his tackles won, and 92% pass completion. So although his pizza chart was small, he did have the right numbers where we needed them. Next up was Taras Kacheraba, 3 caps for Ukraine, was looking like a standout player to go for us. 29 years old meant he would have had to come in and be a starter. 81% of his headers won, 77% of his tackles, and passes completed 93%, and a progressive pass rate of 5.34 per 90. He looked ideal for us, and we're definitely going to get a bit more scouting done on. Next up was young homegrown centre-back Zan Zala from Radomilj. With 1,980 minutes under his belt, he was having a good season. No caps for the youth team in Slovenia and no caps for the senior team, but he was winning 80% of his headers, 79% of his tackles, completing 92% of his passes, and having progressive passes of 5.27 per 90. He was playing very, very well in a pretty poor team in Slovenia. Filippo Sgargabi was one that was joined on the list as well, and one that looked very, very useful. An Italian, 27 years old and standing at 6'3", he was winning 81% of his headers, 74% of his tackles, with a pass completion rate of 92%. He had made 1,742 minutes in terms of appearances and was a very good player. However, I thought this would be a struggle due to his wage, a £3,000 a week wage playing for a Serie C team. He could step up and probably do us a job, but that wage might hurt us. Fellow Italian Marco Bellicci was next on the list, a left-footed centre-back, which is always good, 1,710 minutes. Standing at 6'2", he won 79% of his headers, although didn't actually challenge for many during his games. 72% of tackles were won and 95% pass completion. Looked like he could be someone very solid to keep the ball moving, but again, a £2,800 a week wage could be a stumbling block moving from Italy to Slovenia. He does currently play in Serie B, which is a higher rated league, so I'm very confident he could do a job for us. 21-year-old Frenchman Chaibe Lahama was next up on the list, and although he looks great, 73% of headers won, 96% of his tackles won, 91% pass completion in 1,207 minutes, he was playing as an amateur for a very low-ranked French team. So we actually discarded him because of that low-level league. We think he's a good player, but he's playing at such a low division we can't accurately determine that. And the final defender that made the list was Hamjuta Sukunu. And he looks very good. 76% of his headers won, where he's challenging for a lot as well. 6.12 headers won per 90 minutes is absolutely insane. 83% of his tackles, 92% pass completion, and he's made 1,868 minutes. A very good candidate at 26 years old and 6'3". Could be a very, very good purchase. And with that, we had decisions to make at centre-back. I didn't feel like any of the 4 senior centre-backs we currently had deserved to lose a potential starting spot. So our first purchase and confirmed signing of the window was Zan Zala, the homegrown Slovenian youngster from Radomilj. £600,000 he cost us, but I think it's a good signing for the future. He's young, he's homegrown, he helps us fill a squad registration place, and when compared to Omar Rekic, actually doesn't disappoint too much. He's nowhere near as good as Rekic yet. He's not putting up the same numbers, but I do think he's going to be a very good squad rotation option for the years to come. Next up, we signed Pedro Gomez, or thought we had. We had agreed a future deal to be done at the end of the season when his contract expired. He was going to join us on a 1.7k per week wage and looked like he could have a lot of potential to replace Mbondo in the centre right back position. But Gomez looks so good. We had a cheeky go at signing him immediately. They wanted 4k. We said yes. And that was the 2 centre-back strengths that we'd gone for. Next up was attacking midfield. Zan Repas was pretty lonely in attacking midfield, and Sheje Oju was our only real option as a right winger. So we went into the player search again and had a look at some stats in there that matched what Zan Repas was making. Zan Repas stood out as a very good player in Slovenia. He was clocking up numbers that not many people could match, and when they did match it, it was very, very close to what he was putting in. So this was going to be a tough position to strengthen. We went for Duda, Kasper Duda, a Polishman who is racking up numbers like you wouldn't believe. He has more goals than he's expected to score, an 87% pass completion ratio. He barely loses possession at 10.02 possession loss per game, which is unbelievably good for a midfielder. He wins back possession 19.76 times per 90 minutes, and he's actually Not too bad at shooting. 50% of his shots going on target in 1,275 minutes. Kasper Duda was one that really perked my interest, especially that he was only 21 years old. There was interest in him. We knew we'd have to move quickly. Next up was Alamin Kurtovic, playing in Slovenia for our rivals Mura. He was putting in very good numbers. Good possession lost ratio, losing it less than Duda over 90 minutes. 88% of his passes completed. Wasn't quite as good as shooting, but was outscoring his expected goals for the season so far. One I was quite excited about because, again, would count as a homegrown player. Next up was Daniel Bunk, probably the most exciting of the bunch, being a young German who had been capped at under-19 level for Germany, wanted by some other clubs. He came in, winning possession more than any of the players that we had looked at before in this attacking midfield role, completing 88% of his passes, scoring more than he was expected, but not as many as the players that had gone before him. But again, hitting the target with 50% of his shots. Now, neither of these players, or none of these players, had a good header-win ratio, but we weren't too worried about that in attacking midfield. So we took our time and decided that Kurtovic was our man. So we made a bid, and Mura said no. They were never going to sell to a direct rival in the league, which was thoroughly disappointing. So rather than signing our prime target for attacking midfield, we signed both the backups, as said, as Duda and Bunk both joined the club. And whilst it might sound like I'm disappointed with that, I think both young players joining the club and playing as rivals or competition for Repas was very, very good. In the comparison screens, you can see they're not too far off his numbers, and in some cases are outplaying him. I'm looking forward to seeing how both of these players develop. And that left us with one major position to fill. Holding midfield was the final piece of the jigsaw, in my mind anyway, and I feel like we had to go and get someone that could do both roles. They could be the Segundo Volante, or they could be a good backup for Verhovec as the holding midfielder. And we start with the two players that occupy the position already. Ziga Repas plays as the Segundo Volante. 91% passes completed, 7.10 progressive passes per game. He is having shots, but not many of them hit the target. 23% of his shots are hitting the target. Not a bad ratio by any means. And he is scoring exactly the amount of non-penalty expected goals he's expected to, with 0.13. He does have 0.19 expected assists a game, which is very good, and he is a bit of a dribbly boy, dribbling at 0.95 times per 90. Blaž Verhovec is our experienced holding midfielder. He sits next to him in the more defensive role, but you can see from that it's not all defensive. 7.98 progressive passes per 90 is very, very good. A 91% pass completion is very good as well. He's progressing the ball forward with passes, and they're finding their targets. He loses the ball, but not too often, at 8.47 times per 90 minutes, and he's winning 68% of his headers, which I think is a crucial stat for our more defensive holding midfielder. He's also winning 83% of his tackles, which is absolutely phenomenal. And knowing that both of these players are integral to our team, we fired up the player search to see if there was someone that could be an amalgamation of both. And lo and behold, one player was found. No need for Python in this one, no need for any further data analytics. This is Dimune. And Dimune is amazing. Milan Dimune, which I think is how you pronounce his name, is an former under-21 Slovakian international. Standing at 6'1", he wins 66% of his headers in central midfield. And not only that, he has 39% of his shots on target. And not only that, he outscores his XG by 0.13 per 90 minutes. Not only that, he's creating 0.16 expected assists per 90 for his team. Not only that, he's progressing the ball forward 7.98 times per 90. And not only that, 92% of his passes are finding their intended target. That is an all-round midfielder if ever I've seen one. He can tackle, he can head, he can shoot, he can assist, he can pass, he can dribble. He very rarely loses possession. He doesn't win it back too often, but he is phenomenal. We're going to scout him and we're going to get a deal done, I'm sure of it. And after a little more scouting, we can see he really does compare to Repas very, very well. I'm very excited about this signing. Probably my favourite of the window. And what makes it even better is we got it secured for a minimal £17,250. I just think this is a bargain and is going to be amazing. £1,900 a week, once and happy to be a fringe player. I think we've picked up a bit of a gem. But of course, it's not all ins. There do have to be some outs as well. And we started the video with Barisic coming to have a little moan. And his moan ended up in a £250,000 move to FC20. The 29-year-old will be getting the move that he desired. He wasn't getting first team football with us, so we move him on. And he will be a loss to this club. But I do think the signings we've brought in have been very, very good. And honestly, I thought that was business done. I thought we would strengthen where we needed to. There was no further news to be coming in. And then this happened. There was a bid accepted by a feeder club of ours, which we had the chance to match on a player called Krausch. I didn't know much about Krausch, so we went and checked Krausch out, and it turns out he looks pretty damn good. So we matched the bid, it got accepted, and Krausch turned out to be an NK Maribor player. And with that, our transfer business was done. It meant the squad had gone from this to this, and there was strength and depth in all positions that we needed it to be. The goalkeepers at the club are good, strong, and give us plenty of depth options. Jug, Pruger and Bergson all look good when called upon. The defence has been anchored by two young, hungry defenders joining the team. They are going to offer plenty of rotation options when needed. Left wing back, we have Shuk, Souza and Senkovic, all very good at the role we asked them to do. Souza's also a backup to Vahovec in that holding midfield role, where Nico Osterek, the youngster, will still be given some game time. Jan Repas is backed up by Milan Duran, but he may lose that starting spot sooner than he thinks. Shrivages is backed up by Fershek at right wing back and gives us two good young options on that side. In attacking midfield, Jan Repas is now competing with Duda and Bunk and gives us more options for rotation of formation. Sergej Ojo is battling with Crouch, but I think he's going to have that starting spot nailed down when we do use a winger. And up front, Benjamin Tete will be our solo striking option, backed up by Algi Vajonrik. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you may realise that we have lost Obo Mabina. He has gone out on loan for the rest of the season. It could leave us short up front, but with Ojo, Tete, Vodronic, Kranj all being able to play up there as well, I think we'll be alright. And if you thought that was the end of the video, of course it's not. We're going to have a quick roundup of the transfers that have happened within Slovenia. So Olympia have lost their best centre-back. Marcel Ratnik has joined AC Milan for 1.7 million, potentially rising to 2.6. Zan Zala was the second biggest deal moving to us from Radomilj. And then Max Basaric was actually the third biggest deal leaving the country from us going to FC20. And then the next two deals to complete the top five were our attacking midfielders joining the club. After that, we actually had the two biggest sales as well, which was Bozic out joining Troyes and Martin Milek joining Mechelen. So some good transfers happening all around Slovenia. Lots of business happening, as you can see. And we weren't quite done there, because knowing that Benjamin Tete was going to leave the club at the end of the season and Metz had no interest in selling him, I thought we'd have a quick look to see if we could replace him at the end of the season on a Bosman ruling. And that thought led us to Croatian striker Stjepan Igrec, 6'1" and winning 60% of his headers, 41% of his shots on target. He is scoring less than he's expected to, but looks like an all-round physical beast, and I'm all for it. He's actually agreed to play as a backup player when he joins, which is good because it means we can go out and potentially sign a new striker when Tete leaves. But when you compare the two of them side by side, there's a lot to like about Stjepan Igrec. And that now actually is the end of the transfer video. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back for the next episode, which will be selling up part of February and March, I guess, because there's no competitive fixtures starting until the 14th of February. But I will see you then. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.